This video is all about coffee setups, but first we're splitting rocks and mixing them in with lab equipment to make pour-over coffee stands. You see, I'm trying to finalize the design of the in-room coffee setups for my new hotel, with the goal of creating a really aesthetic landscape of coffee devices that can be made with a bunch of basic DIY techniques. But let's start with the rocks. This one has a nice shape, but it's a little too wobbly. So the first thing I'm going to do is take my angle grinder and just flatten out the bottom. This took about 45 seconds, and I'll post a link to the grinding wheel that I used in the description. If you want to make a base that's a little bit thinner, I recommend slicing the rocks. And once again, I'm just using my angle grinder, but this time rather than grinding it down, I'm just cutting a line all the way around the perimeter. Now I can shove my giant rock cleaver into the crack and split the stones in two. I have been experimenting a lot with rocks this year and it's been really fun. If you know any good YouTube channels that do work with stone or rock, put your recommendations in the comment sections below. I'm just experimenting and developing my own techniques, but I probably should watch a couple experts at this point. A few more minutes of cleanup with the angle grinder gives me a smooth, flat surface. This grinding wheel is a little flatter and thinner than the previous one, so I can't remove material as fast, but it is great for flat and smooth surfaces. Next, I'm going to use my Ryobi hammer drill to drill some holes that will allow me to mount stainless steel rods in the rocks. This doesn't take very long, and I just start with smaller drill bits and work my way up, but these bits are meant for reinforced concrete, and they get dull pretty fast. So I'm trying to find something that has a little bit of a harder, more diamond-like cutting edge, but that has enough length so I can drill holes all the way through a stone. To glue the rods in place, I'm using Quikrete anchoring epoxy. It's basically just like a super strong glue that works on concrete, rocks, and metals. I over drilled the holes for these 3/8 inch rods, so one, there'll be a little bit of room for the epoxy, and two, this way I can set the rods level even if my holes weren't straight. The kettle sort of sits on the curvy stone, but it's not super stable, so I'm just going to trace the outline of the kettle with a pencil and then grind out a recess for it. Power carving rocks isn't really that hard, and it's a lot of fun. In general, rocks are a porous material, so to seal them, I'm using cutting board oil. It's basically just a food-grade mineral oil. The stand was easy to make, it's super sturdy, but it is a little bit heavy. So I'm comparing it to some options that I got from Amazon. And there's surprisingly a lot of really nice looking pour-over stands on there for under 50 bucks. Next, I want to organize the coffee, the spoons, and the sweeteners. So I built a prototype out of Lego. Lego bricks are one of my favorite design tools for prototyping. Even if I'm tired at the end of the day and don't feel like working, I'm always up for some Lego, and I'll just throw on an audiobook and start putting together pieces until I get shapes that I can look at and evaluate and then make changes to. I'm lucky enough to have a pretty big Lego collection, and one of the most important parts of this collection is all the flat tiles that I have. This allows me to cover up all the bumps and get ready for silicone mold making materials. I cut up some pieces of melamine to make a mold that surrounds the Lego prototype. I'm just going to hot glue the Lego down right to the melamine. Don't worry, you can scrape the hot glue off later. I hot glued on the side walls as well and then sealed up everything with some latex caulk. The two-part silicone that I use is pretty thin, and if you don't have a waterproof seal, you can waste a lot of material. Once again, I'm using Moldstar 30 from Smooth On. There are some cheaper options out there, but they're not that much cheaper, and I've used this product so many times, and I just consistently get great results with it. I let the silicone cure overnight, stripped off the molds, and then pried the silicone off of the Lego. The silicone really captures the detail of every tile, and you will see some little thin sheets of silicone that work their way in between the bricks, and those just tear right off. The silicone doesn't stick to the plastic on the Lego, and the bricks are not harmed at all. In previous videos, I've shown how I've used my laundry machines to wash the Lego by putting them in mesh bags. I'm going to fill these molds with different types of concrete, starting with Quikrete 5000. It's just a nice gray concrete mix. I mix it to the consistency of lumpy oatmeal, place it in the mold, and then vibrate it with a hammer drill. I let the concrete cure for about 24 to 48 hours, and then just pop it right out of the mold. For white concrete, I just use white Portland cement mixed with sand at about a 1:5 ratio. You can use white sand if you want pure white concrete, but I like this kind of bone off-white color. I took the same mixture and then added green pigment to get this nice sage green color. If you don't have a hammer drill, you can vibrate the concrete by tapping on the sides or using your spoon to kind of push the concrete down. I just find that the hammer drill is really great for getting rid of most of the bubbles. These concrete serving trays came out great. The spoons go right over the sweetener and the tea. We're pre-packaging coffee into serving sizes that are perfect for the coffee filters, and the coffee filters themselves slide right in the back. I also wanted some different serving boards that would frame up all the different coffee devices. For the black board, I'm just using red oak. I cut the pieces with my circular saw guided by my Kreg portable CrossCut. This is about as easy as woodworking gets. I sanded the cut pieces to 150 grit and then started making my own black stain. To do this, I fill a jar with vinegar and then add some steel wool. After letting the mixture sit overnight, I just apply it to the wood and it starts a chemical reaction that blackens the wood. It typically takes me 2 applications to get the wood nice and dark, but different pieces of red oak react differently, and there's been a few times where I've had to add watered down India ink over the top. I used my Kreg clamps to help me glue and screw the pieces together, and then I clear coated the whole thing with a water-based polyurethane. I also wanted to see a more natural and organic aesthetic. Something slightly more hippie-ish, but not too much, that would look great with handmade ceramics. And for this, I'm using a piece of 1.5 inch thick ash. I cut the pieces to length using my circular saw, use my biscuit jointer to make a few slots, which makes a level glue up nice and easy. This thick panel is pretty heavy, and ash is hard, so the edges are sharp, so I thought it'd be nice to round over the corners with my jigsaw and then use my palm router with a roundover bit to ease all the other edges. If you're a professional woodworker or have access to a full shop, obviously this would be easier to do with large stationary power tools. My approach I think is great if you're a DIYer or if you're a design professional that just wants to do mock-ups instead of renderings. And then sanded everything to 150 grit before applying some Rubio monocoat. I'm using the white finish and it just takes down the yellow of the wood a little bit and it looks really great. I also used a green stain by Minwax on another panel of red oak for the monochromatic green setup. These are all options for the in-room coffee setup of the hotel I'm designing. We're under construction and now we're starting to work on a lot of the details. So I wanted to present some options to our investors to see which aesthetic approach appealed to them. I thought about putting the rock pour-over stand in here, but just felt a little too heavy and I feel like it could be used to break a window or something. Of these options, let me know which ones you like the best. We have this sort of walnut plywood one that has some mid-century modern vibes. The brass pour-over stand from Amazon looks good, but there's nothing to capture the drips, and the base is particle board, so I don't think it's going to hold up great. I paired the white concrete with the whitewashed ash, and this is probably the most traditional Joshua Tree kind of aesthetic. I paired this setup with a Chemex instead of a pour-over stand, and a handmade ceramic mug that I got while I was at Haystack. The monochromatic green is pretty cool, and I love that the shades aren't quite all the same. I just feel it gives the setup a little bit more depth. I hope you'll come see these for yourself when the hotel's open, but if not, perhaps a few of these DIY techniques will find their way into your own morning ritual. None of this was particularly difficult to do, and that's kind of been the theme of my work over the years, is how do you learn a bunch of cool tips and then start combining them together to create spaces that feel special. All black is never a bad option, but it does show dust a little bit more than the other designs. I still need to design a small waste receptacle where guests can place the used coffee grounds, and I also want to find a good way to provide creamers for the coffee if people are so inclined. I just hate those little plastic tubs where you have to like pull the foil off the top. And the powdered stuff, come on, that's just gross. So if you got any ideas there for prepackaged things or a nice little mini bottle setup of creamers that we could put into the refrigerators, let me know in the comment section below. All right, thanks for watching.